So now that the weapon is inside of our content browser, let's go back and fix some of the skin weighting on this, because as before when I exported it out, I just put a skeleton on there with one main overall skin bind to it. So I'm going to go back and refine it in Maya. So within Maya, let me just go ahead and I'm going to open that asset, which I have out on my desktop, under base rifle and the base rifle FBX. So here's our rifle that we've been working on, and right now skin weighting is absolutely terrible. So a quick way I like to end up skin weighting a lot, or weighting a lot of this stuff to the skeleton, is I'll end up doing a lot of face selection by the actual objects. So right there I have the magazine, and I can come up to the weight painting tool, which can be found under the animation tab and the skin, and I believe weight painting, which is located, is under skin and paint skin weights tool. I have mine located up here on my own little bar because I tend to use it quite often. So we can see that there's a bone influencing it. Let's see what bone that is. So let me go to tool settings, and they have the root, which I don't want. I'm just going to assign a whole 100% to the actual magazine. I think it's called ammo feed, which is the bone name, the ammo feed root, and we have a bone called magazine. So what I'll probably do is assign it to the magazine. I'll just do a 1 opacity value and flood it. Actually, let me go over to vertices, to verts, and then I should be able to flood it. And what that did was any things that was other bones that were influencing it are now not influencing it any longer. So only that magazine bone will influence that. So again, just like doing the same process to everything else. For this object, I have the front of my weapon, and I have a couple more parts here. So I'll just double click on the parts that I know that I'm going to want to add to this front of the barrel. And I'll just grow the selection by holding down shift and tapping on the bracket keys there to grow selection. So let me move this up and see what I have missed. So I missed that one ring, which is right there. Alright, now I got my part selected. Just go to vertices, to verts, tool settings, and paint skin weights, and I want this to become part of the barrel. I'm going to flood that. Now there's no influence anymore for any other bones. Do that to the back of the stock. Paint skin weights. Go to the stock. Now we have a couple parts on our main housing here. So I have the top rail, I have the main body, I have the trigger guard. Let's see, I know that's part of the body too. And so is this bolt bolt housing area back here. And there's also one little nub that sticks out from the housing that acts as the buffer spring kind of area for that stock. So I'll make sure too that I assign that to the barrel, because I don't think I did. I might have missed this piece. So for this piece, let's actually assign it to the housing, so it's kind of part of the housing anyways, since it's being held through there. So again, let's paint weights. Let's go to the housing, and I'm going to flood that. Let's go to the trigger, verts, paints, find our trigger bone, flood. Almost done here. So now we have this little dust cover for our projectiles or rounds that when they fly out, we can animate that if we want to. And we got to find which bone is closest to it, because more likely that's the one that it's been assigned to. However, I think if this was to rotate, it really wouldn't look good. We only need it to like move just a little bit if we want to do any animation on this piece. So let's find the internal component 1, which would be the bolts, and then internal component 2 should be, let's It's that bone down there, which is not what we're looking for. There we go. So that's that bone. So let's flood that. We're missing a few parts here. I don't know why. Let's do face selection again. Select those 3 parts. Paint those skin weights. Let me try that one more time. There we go. So now we're 100% on those pieces. Alright, so next we have the actual bolts little here. This is going to move back and forth when we go to animate this piece. So it's got some influence, I think, coming from the actual body of the main weapon, or the receiver end. And let's go to internal component 1, that bone, flood it, and now when we move this bone back and forth, it should look like it slides when we reshoot this. Okay, so let's just move some bones around here. I'm just testing to make sure I'm not influencing anything else or anything crazy. It's looking pretty good. Let's move that. We'll know for sure if anything else is influenced by the root, which is it's not. So it looks like we're good to go with our skinning on this weapon. So let's re-export this back out again. So I'm going to select the actual weapon. I'm going to select the bones first and the weapon, just so it's easier. So you can select either or. Export the selection out. I'm going to export it over my old file. So this has the corrected skin weights on it. I don't have any animation for it. So I'm going to export that selection. Close that down. And within Unreal, let's check out what our new fixes were for our skin weights. So I can re-import this mesh. And since I moved it to a new folder for packaging to the website, I want to look for that, which is going to be under base rifle, and there's our new base rifle. Alright, so re-imported. Now if I were to select the bone for the bolts over here, which was internal component 1, we'll see that also these bones here are darker, so that means they have skin weighting information. Some of these are lighter, which they don't have anything. We'll see that we can actually move that bolt back and forth. Internal component 2, there's that one that was off-centered from the actual dust cover. So, I mean, we can just do that for like animation, just to make the little particles fly out, make it look like it's doing something. And we have our trigger, which should be it. We'll probably have to reskin that another day, but I'll take care of that another time. Okay, so now we have our actual weapon done. Let's assign some materials to the actual weapon because I don't have anything on it. So I believe there might be a Lambert that came in. Let's actually, correction on that. I forgot, we're going to end up starting to build our material for this guy. But let's organize and get a new folder for this. And I'm going to call this the rifles folder. And with that rifle selected and the physics asset and the skeleton, I'm going to bring that into my folder. Just going to move it there. I'm going to right click and do fix redirectors just in case. And our weapons folder, let's jump over to that rifles weapons folder, excuse me, and let's make a new material. I'm going to call this the weapon master underscore MAT in all caps. And from this, I'm going to begin building out the master material system that's going to just hold all the information and become the instances for all of our other materials for our weapons. I know I'm going to need a few texture nodes, so if I hold down T, I'll drop in a texture node here. It's not going to have anything on it right now, but we're going to connect everything together in our little system with all of our parameters, so we can actually expose that stuff for the instances to be used and change on the fly. With our master material kind of open, ready for our editing, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in a texture sample. I don't have any textures for the weapon, so I can just throw a very quick little stand-in texture for it. I think I'll probably just use a UA4 logo card. And for this, I'm going to convert it to a parameter. And a parameter is going to allow me to do is actually make changes to this within the instance and not affect the parent. So I'll call this the diffused texture. And with that, I'm going to also need a color to use. Let's say if I don't have a texture, for this instance, this is a great example. So I'll hold down on 3, and what that does is that makes a vector 3, which is red, green, blue. Just think of that as pretty much that. It's simple enough. And I want to convert this to a parameter as well, and I'm going to call this the diffuse color. Now with these two, I want to have something driven. Like, what if I have a texture? I want to actually be able to plug it in. If I don't have a texture, then I just want to be able to change the color. To be able to do this, I can actually use something called a switch. And think of a switch kind of like a branch node, where you have a true or false, and you have something that's driving it, a yes or no, or a 1 or 0 for that. And what I'll do is, if I have a texture and it's true, then yes, I want to use whatever's up here. If I don't have something, then I need to use just a filler color. And to drive that value, we can use a thing called a bool. So let's use a bool parameter so we can actually change this within the instance. I'm going to call this has diffuse texture map with a question mark. If it does, then if we don't, it's going to be a straight color. If we do, it's going to be using a texture. And to see this example, we can plug that right in the base color. And right now, this is actually set to false. So if I end up changing the default value to true, it's going to refresh and it's going to become this material up here, or this texture up here if we have one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that at false. And let's group these up, and to give an example to see what exactly your work is doing in here, I'm going to apply this. I'm going to come back to my content browser, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a temporary, I'm going to create a material instance of this, and I'm just going to call this temp for now, because I'm not going to keep it. I will get rid of it in just a minute. So if I double click on that, I'm actually seeing a instance of our object. So the nice thing about this is actually on the fly. Because remember when we switched on that bool, that it took a second to load? Well, in an instance, it does it automatically because it's not doing any draw call on it. So there's our static switch. There's our bool switch. You can't do anything to change it until you say, yes, I'm actually changing it from the master. So once you hit this, it'll actually allow you to plug in a texture. So you're getting the same exact effect as we have in our master material, and you'll see that this shows up. However, it's kind of looking a little bit unorganized, so let's see if we can organize that a bit within our main material, and we'll do the same thing as we can do with variables, so we can assign groups. So this will be the diffuse group. Bring it down to diffuse, and same thing with this one here, diffuse as well. So now if I apply that, go over to our instance, we'll see we now have a diffuse group. And it'll say, does it have a diffuse map, yes or no, and this will change up at the top of here to give us an idea of what we're looking at. So let's do the same thing. We can kind of copy most of this and just we'll have to change out the names and everything as we go along here. So let's copy that, paste that in, and let's change this. For our next one, we're going to deal with a metallic map and our roughness map, even specular. But the only thing is we don't need a vector 3, we just need a constant number, because specular, roughness, and normal maps, all they are is black and white channels. So we'll hold down one, we'll click, will give us a constant. We're going to convert this constant to a parameter, and I'm going to call this the roughness. Let's call this the metal amount. And let's change this to metallic texture. And let's change it from the category, and we're going to give a new category. We're going to call this metallic. Put that in metallic as well. And has a metallic. Has a metallic map, not texture. Change that as well to metallic. Okay. So now we're dealing with a constant number as well. Metallic. There we go. Sorry about that. So let's plug this into our metallic. And what we'll do is this is a black and white value, so it's going to look kind of strange. Right now we're plugging all three channels in. If I check out this texture by clicking on the texture node and then double clicking on the actual image, we can actually see what channels are available for us. I know this has an alpha on it just by looking at the alpha channel here, and it was black. So it's gray. So let's see what else we have on red, green, and blue. So the red channel looks to be a grayscale, green is grayscale, and blue is also part of that grayscale. So this is a grayscale map. It's going to look kind of funny since that's what we're plugging into metallic, because metallic is strictly black and white. Is it metal or is it not? But for this, since we don't have any channels just yet, we'll make some for our weapon eventually, and we'll end up replacing these. So I'm just going to plug the red channel into the true instead of using all three. And that'll be that. So the next one we're going to do is we're going to do another copy. I'm going to paste that below. And I'm going to use the green channel for my roughness. And let's make a new group called roughness group. I'm going to copy that word because I'm too lazy to keep on repasting it or retyping it. Change that to the roughness value group as well. And let's change our bool parameter to roughness map and roughness group. And let's drag this up into roughness. You can do the same thing with specular. I'm not going to do that right now for this example because I'm not using any specular value on our weapons. They're not going to have any wet look to them or anything like that. As you can see, our material is changing up here to be something really reflective, and it's going to look really strange on our weapon in a minute here if we plug that right in. Now for our normal map, what are we going to do to handle that? Well, we don't have any normals or anything like that to use. We can plug in I think a noise maybe or just something, but right now I'm going to leave it alone. I don't want to mess around with it too much until I actually have some maps to plug in later. So let's comment these out. I'm going to call this this is the roughness. This is the metallic. Hello. Thought I was typing something. And this is our diffuse or color map. Alright, so we basically have three bool switches that'll control our roughness and metallic values and our diffuse if we don't have any of those maps. And eventually we can grow this even more as we begin to actually plug in our channels and maps, because whenever I bake out my own channels, I tend to do something where I use one map to control my red and greens for my roughness, my metallic, my roughness, and then my blue will be like my specular channel. And I'll do that one map to control three different values, and it saves a lot on texture space for sure because you're using one image for three different things. So for that, let's save this. The reason I clicked on save is it'll apply it as well for us. And let's go in, let's close our master down, and I'm going to throw this material on all these channels here. So I kind of lied. I thought I was going to get rid of my temp, but I'm going to call this the temp underscore mat, the underscore ins instance. And I'm going to bring that over to the rifles right now. So in our rifles, we have our instance open, and I'm going to plug this into here. I'm going to select that object in the content browser, and all I'm going to do is just use this arrow to fill in all of those channel maps. It's going to give a second to compile this. This is going to be a shiny little metallic rifle, which looks very odd. Even when I hold L and I drag the light around, it just looks really shiny, which is kind of weird. So let's roughen this up a bit. And if we wanted to, if we had like a normal map or normal like channel to use, we could actually break up a lot of this smoothness. So bringing this over, I'm trying to make as much room as I can here. Okay, so we can see the rifle, and let's begin changing some of our values. So we don't have a diffuse, but we have a color, and we're just going to make it, well, we might change this color. We don't have a metallic map. We want to change our metallic value, and we don't have any roughness map, but we do want to change the roughness. So if we increase our roughness, we'll see that it begins to get rougher, and we're immediately seeing the result. Like I said, it shows up without having to wait, which is great about using instances. It definitely doesn't use any memory. This is a metal object, except it's a very rough object. And because we're using pure black, we should change that to something with a little bit of gray. Because nothing in real life is actually pure black like that. So I'm going to bring it up just a little bit, make it somewhat a really dark gray. And yep, so I think we're good there on our instance material to hold us over until we get some actual textures on this guy. So now if we take a look at it in the editor, it's not looking too bad. It's not as much of an eyesore as it was before, but it's standing out pretty well. So again, we're going to have to do some more functions, but now that we got our material set up for our weapon, we'll save out our content from there. I'm going to submit this project file to the website so everybody can download if they want to use this stuff. And then from there, our next step is going to be setting up all of our logic to handle different weapons and different combinations of stuff and getting our projectiles going. So we'll step into the world of projectiles next, and I'll see you then.